When doing keyword research, can you explain how the ease to rank is determined and whether that is a reliable metric? So if I'm right here in Keyword Scout and I search gardening gloves, you're going to see this column right here, ease to rank. Now, I've done my research. There's not really, I was reading through tons of different Jungle Scout help desk things and articles, and they're very hush hush about like how that is actually, how this metric is actually determined. Like they don't say specifically, oh, this is based on this, this, and this, but we can assume that it's based off, they've written some sort of backend, algorithm code that takes into account, I think, probably search volume and sales. Oh, we don't have sales on here because we're on Keyword Scout, but it probably takes into account search volume, sales, number of sellers, advertising, bid costs, all that kind of stuff to come up with an ease to rank score. So is it relevant? Yes, I think it's relevant. Like, I'm not sure how accurate, like going to the question, like, is it a reliable metric? How accurate is it? I'm not sure because I just don't really know exactly where the data's from, but I would take this data honestly with like a grain of salt as far as whether or not it's like a hard yes or no that you should include those keywords simply because they said very difficult. Just because it said very difficult or extremely difficult or difficult, I would not let that affect my decision as far as should I use those keywords. For example, if I'm trying to sell gardening gloves and I see, oh, gardening gloves is difficult to rank, I'm not gonna include that in my listing, or I'm not gonna use that in my advertising, even though you're selling gardening gloves. You see what I mean? So don't let that affect your decision to target a specific keyword. I think search volume and like some of these other metrics, trends are at relevancy. Obviously, like I say, relevancy is the number one factor. So if it's a relevant keyword, include it. I don't care if it's very difficult to rank. If the search volume is less than 150, it's probably not necessary, but like, yes, gardening gloves, I'm going to include it. Gardening, I'm going to include it, even though it is difficult and very difficult. So use it, see it, notice it, but don't let it scare you one way or another. That's kind of how the opportunity score works. See it, say, oh, that's interesting, but don't let it affect your decision on whether or not you're going to sell something. Okay. So what I wanted to show you guys actually has to do with this. And a lot of people don't know that this exists. So over here on the far right, you can actually customize the columns here. And a lot of people don't know that all these other columns exist. So not all of them are checked by default, I think. They weren't on mine when I first got Jungle Scout, and I've seen other students and I haven't seen them checked. So if you come in here and you can check these, you can see all sorts of other data for specific keywords. And so I want to go through a few of them that I think are really, really interesting to know. So we've got like search volumes. So we've got the exact search volume, but we can also see broad search volume. Like with Amazon advertising, you got exact match keywords and broad match keywords. So this would be like broadly used variations of the keywords, synonyms, misspellings, keywords that include that phrase, very, very broad searches that are relevant to gardening gloves. So while the exact term gardening gloves gets 18,000 searches a month, there's 68,000 searches that are all related to gardening gloves, closely enough related that it would be relevant to this specific product. So that's very, interesting data to see like, wow, the market is actually a lot bigger for gardening gloves than what you would expect just looking at the exact match data. Look at the keyword for gardening. It was 23,000, but the broad is 376,000. That's a drastic increase. But again, this is any broad variation, including the word change, the spelling, pluralization of gardening. So I think that's a really interesting column. This one right here, recommended promotions, is probably my favorite secret column. This recommended promotions is them recommending how many daily promotions. Now, if we're saying promotions, we're saying giveaways for our own. How many units would you have to give away every day? When we say giveaway, someone still has to buy it. So it'd be like them buying it and you reimbursing them, sort of a dealio. How many of those would you have to do every day to be a top 3 ranking for that specific keyword in 1 to 2 weeks? So that's pretty dang awesome. Like, you can see right here, if you want to sell gardening gloves and your top keyword is gardening gloves, 18,000 searches, 68,000 broad, and you want to be a top 3, that means you're on page 1. You are the top top 3 listings for that keyword, you will need to give away or sell 43 units a day for the first 2 weeks, and you could be in the top 3 in 2 weeks. That's what it would take to rank in the top 3. Interesting. Very, 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 very interesting data. So when you look at keywords that you want to rank for, you could look at different long tail keyword variations that have pretty decent search volume and get an idea of, okay, if I give away 44 pairs of gardening gloves every day, in a week to 2 weeks, I'd be in the top 3 for this keyword. Pruning gloves, I mean, they only have 163 searches, but I'd only have to give away 10 a day. So really, really cool column, really interesting data right there. So as you're planning like your giveaways, you can kind of see like, hey, if I want to go really hardcore, you could go ahead and order more units from your supplier and give away 43 every day. You'd get up there to page 1 really quickly. Some other columns on here that I think are really cool. They're way over here on this far side, organic product count and sponsored product count. So organic product count, total number of products returned on Amazon for this keyword. Sponsored, total number of sponsored products recently detected for the keyword. So this is how many products are listed on Amazon for the keyword gardening gloves. So this will give you another pretty decent idea of how many competitors you have, at least not from a brand standpoint, but from just a simple product listing standpoint. So if you want to sell gardening gloves, you're competing with around 3,000 other listings. But sponsored product count is showing how many listings are being sponsored, like how many listings have advertising money behind them. If this number is low, that's a good sign. I know a lot of other Amazon coaches and people who teach Amazon strategy. This is a metric that they look at very specifically, very heavily to see what are your competitors advertising. So what does the sponsored product count look like? How many sponsored listings are on page 1? I've seen other people teach that where they say, search your product on Amazon and count up how many of these are organic and how many of these are sponsored. So you just have to scroll through and, get out a piece of paper and do a check mark every time you see one that's a sponsored listing, sponsored, and then you can keep track of, there's another sponsored, say, on page 1, 10 of the listings were sponsored and 35 were organic. But I mean, Jungle Scout, we're kind of getting data like that right here. We're seeing how many sponsored products there are out of the total number of organic product listings for that specific keyword. So some really cool columns right there. I'll just circle them one more time for you that you can look at when doing your keyword research for your different product ideas and things. So yeah, I would definitely consider customizing those columns within Keyword Scout to find that data.